Okay, got it. Sorry about that.
Late arrival letter from our part-time Justice Court clerk informing us that she's resigning to take another position. So, there's a motion to accept with regrets. Second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Carried. All right, first agenda item is comprehensive plan presentations. I think we have more than one, so you want to start?
Sure. So, thank you, Supervisor, for the report. For those of you who don't know me, Joe Bianchi is engineering. My colleague Jackie Hicks, who's director of planning. We've had the opportunity over the last couple months, myself and Ms. Brown, to talk with you individually about some topics of importance to the town board. Since that time, the town has hired a senior consultant. We've done a couple projects over the last couple months, working for grading water district, like the PFOA water issues. Being a planning board engineer, all great opportunities for us. And I know over the last couple of weeks, maybe, that there's been a desire for the town board to, I guess, open the book on your comp plan. Don't know to what extent. Is it basically holistically look at everything, or is it a targeted research? So tonight, I think we want to talk about what a comp plan is, and then really glean from that, whether it's a discussion this evening, or you share topics with us about what is really important to the town board. What do you want to accomplish on this? Is this, like I said, a whole comprehensive plan update, or is this targeted discrete activities where it may be done in an expedited fashion? We really want to know what's important. So that if we were to provide you a scope, it is basically what the town board wants us to deliver on, and then we can develop a scope. So with that, with Jackie, maybe talk to you.
All right, good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to meet you. And thanks for the opportunity to talk with you a little bit about what a comprehensive plan is, kind of our approach to preparing comprehensive plans or updating comprehensive plans. We are low tech tonight, so I'm going to skim through the handout that we provided to you. Certainly there's more information there you can take some time to digest, but really want to just kind of hit the highlights on our approach to comprehensive planning and hopefully get some feedback from you. Please feel free to stop me if you have any questions along the way. But I'm going to move right into page 3. These are some highlights about MJ. You have brought us on board recently, so you are familiar with what we do from an engineering perspective, from a planning perspective. I am the director of planning. We have 7 planners in our office to be able to provide support to communities in comprehensive planning, zoning updates, etc. And so we have recently completed several comprehensive plans. I've just listed 10 on this list here in a variety of communities of a variety of different scales, sizes, and those that have been adopted have been unanimously adopted. And I think it's in large part because of the process that we engage in. And I do want to point out that some of the comprehensive plans on this list here have not been holistic, complete updates, but have been targeted on key areas or topics that the community has identified, that the legislative body, the town board, such as yourself, has identified as being the most critical items that have experienced change or you really want to dive into. So if you move to the next page, Section 272A of town law does describe what a comprehensive plan is, and it talks through the process for doing that. I am not going to bore you with that now. Just trust us. We would follow that and make sure anything aligns with the requirements under town law section 272A. On page 5, what I like to describe as a comprehensive plan is the blueprint for the future of your community, the future of Lagrange. How do you want to function? What do you want this community to be like in 5, 10 years, even 20 years? It's purposely broad in nature and looks holistically at your entire town. And it addresses community-wide topics, and that could be transportation, housing, open space, agriculture, whatever's important to you. And the reason to have a plan, and I'm skipping on to page 6, sometimes, and you have a plan from 2005, right? So you know it's important to have a comprehensive plan. When talking to communities, I think it's also important to highlight why you want to have a plan. If you're a business, you have a business plan, mapping out the future and how are you going to get there. If you're a family, you might be planning to buy a house or go on vacation or go to college. You need to map that out now so that you can take the appropriate steps to get where you want to be. Communities need to do the same thing, right? So you can plan for population, land use changes, infrastructure. Joel mentioned PFOAs, other water, sewer, your streets, other infrastructure needs. It's important to plan for that so you can make informed decisions sitting at the table you're at moving forward for the community. It is baseball season, and I happen to be a big Yankee fan. Sorry for any non-Yankee fans. So there's a quote that I have here that I think is really quite good as it comes to community planning. If you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. Yogi Berra, right? It's Yogi Berra. So it's important for communities to plan. And it also creates an opportunity for you to have a community conversation to build consensus around key topics in your community. Again, it can become a resource for you as you're making your decisions, but also as you're looking for funding opportunities to implement things. Having an updated plan can really be important for that. And in terms of how you create a plan, town law, I mentioned, kind of maps out how you do that. You, the town board, can take that on yourselves in creating a plan. You can also appoint a special board or committee to prepare that plan in whatever form that is, and then they would bring that back to you. You as the town board and the legislative body are the only ones that can adopt a comprehensive plan. The minimum requirements for that comprehensive planning process from a public engagement perspective is a single public hearing at the committee level, if you choose to have a committee do this, or a single public hearing at the town board level. I'm going to talk in a moment about how we think that's not enough, and we would encourage you to have more opportunities for public input to make sure this is a consensus-driven process. But the way that we approach the development of a comprehensive plan is to look at the existing state. So where are you now? What is going on now in your community from a population, a socioeconomic, housing, transportation? What is happening right now in your community? What issues are there with those various topics? What opportunities do you see? From that, we then look at what is your desired state? What is your vision for the next 5, 10, 15 years? And we go through this process working with the community to understand what that vision is. And if this were to be a targeted update looking at key topic areas, that existing conditions piece, the existing state, might help you to understand what are those topics that you really need to focus in and spend more time on evaluating in terms of what your future vision should be. And then the third part of that is the implementation. So we look at the existing state, where are you now? We look at your desired state, where do you want to be? And then how do you implement that? How do you get there? What are the steps that you as a community, as a town board, need to take to get there? So that's how we create it. I've got some detail here about how we go through that existing state. One of the things that we think is really important in pulling together the actual planning document is that it's very user-friendly. So we use a lot of graphic-based to help explain all the text and the data in the details, because these can sometimes be some pretty cumbersome documents. So we like to make it a little easier read. And quite honestly, it's more fun as a planner to pull together. So we have maps and graphics, and we really try to illustrate what the text is saying, what the data is telling us. That desired state, that's one of the areas where we think it's really critical to have more public engagement and really connect with the community. And we kind of have a 4-step process. So first, understanding how to connect with various community members, stakeholders, business owners, property owners. And so we would look to you to help us understand what's the best way to connect. Is it in-person meetings? Is it virtual meetings? Is it coming to the farmer's market? Is it a pop-up at the grocery store? What is the best way to reach your community? Once we reach your community members, then we really need to listen. Like, what is being said? What are they really saying? We're not just hearing, but we're actually listening to what's being said, and asking questions to dive a little bit deeper to understand what their concerns are or what their ideas are. From that point, we then discover what are those opportunities that we can build on, what are those issues we can address, and that gets folded into that desired state and that implementation of next steps. And then finally, the documentation of all of that. We want to make sure, as you're going through this process, to document for the community how what they are providing in terms of input is being incorporated into the process, and how that gets back to you as the decision makers here in the town. So that's how we work on the desired state. And the implementation, I don't mean to gloss over that because it's probably one of the most critical pieces. You want to make sure that this is a document that you can implement, and that you can work through those next steps. We would work with you to identify kind of a phased approach to implementation. What are those short-term actions you can really hit out of, right out of the gate? You can really tackle early on, easy things to tackle, and then some of those things that might take more time to be able to try to implement. I talked a little bit here about some public engagement. We really do feel very strongly about a robust engagement process. It'll ultimately make your decision a little bit easier when you have a draft plan in front of you to adopt, if you can understand that, yes, this is something that is supported by the community. And then the last piece that I just wanted to hit on is finding funding. So there is funding available to help support comprehensive plan updates. And when I checked this morning, it wasn't live yet, I don't know if it is, but the New York State Consolidated Funding application process, there is a Department of State Smart Growth Grant that does fund things like comprehensive planning. We're just wrapping up, and in fact next week, we are hopeful it will be adopted by the town board, a smart growth plan in Essex County, so up in the North Country. And we're just kicking off another smart growth comprehensive plan right now, so we're very familiar with that program. That could be an opportunity to reach out, but try to condense this into a very short period of time. I know you've got a long agenda today, but that is a very quick highlight of our general approach, some of the key aspects of a comprehensive plan update. We would really look forward to continuing the conversation with you, whether it's about how to find funding or what areas and what approach you may want to take to update your 2005 comprehensive plan. Because it's time, it's 28.
I have a question.
Sure.
At the beginning, you said that before you would be able to give us any kind of an estimate on schedule, which I assume means cost as well, for assisting us, you'd need to determine from us what the scope of the effort is and that sort of thing. In this diagram that shows all the different steps, where in that process would that end up? In other words, how much time before the time we first started talking, before we had an idea how much it was going to cost? Or how long it might take?
Well,
can you describe how we go about that? I mean, is it as simple as sitting down with us for an hour and then determining what we had, or do we think it's multiple meetings and lots of questions and us thinking and coming back? How does that piece, you gathering what you need in order to present us with a realistic proposal and timeline?
I think it's hearing from you what you know your community, right? You know what some of the issues are that have come up over the last 20 years that you may want to revisit in terms of topics. You know a lot about what you may want to be looking at that may not have been contemplated in your 2005 comprehensive plan. So I think it starts with understanding, do you want to do a complete update of your comprehensive plan and look at all those topics as they are right now in 2025 and looking forward? Or are there certain things in your community that maybe not going to change all that much, and it's fine, and you're comfortable with it, your community is, but there are some other topics that things may have changed, or maybe should change, and haven't, and you want to target.
Right, agreed, but where we kind of are, and it's been 20 years, we have a town center that half the residents don't even know exists. That's been on the books with no sunshine clause. Most projects, after 5 years, you have to come back and ask for permission to move forward. This project had no sunshine clause. So it's here, whether we like it or not, in a sense. In other words, I didn't give an opinion on it, not that I'm against town center. I actually like the project, but the size of it, obviously, with preliminary approvals 20 years ago, much has changed in our town. So we can't really look too much at town center because it has its preliminary approval, so there's no saying we want to start over. But we're kind of bursting at the seams, so I don't know what you mean by, in other words, we're at the 11th hour, in my opinion. We've got 800 apartments on the book approved already. We have probably 1,000 or 2,000 homes, at least 1,000 on the books, and permitted zoning could allow another 1,000 houses on the books. There's only certain corridors we can really look at, in my opinion. You've got the Hamlet zoning, you've got Knoxon Road, which that commercial needs to be cleaned up down to H.O. Penn. Well, what is commercial, what is general business? Things like that in those corridors. The corridor 82 was looked at a while ago, but it was commercial, switched to general business. That should probably get looked at. And other areas where we could possibly put a little more business, but we really don't have would you agree, Alan, many spots left to put commercial? I asked for this because we're kind of divided now as a board as far as, you know, some of us feel that, you know, town center's been here but never was started yet, but now they want to start. So, I feel, you know, we had a moratorium, which I sponsored, for 3-story houses. We outlawed 3-story houses except for town center. We had a moratorium, we were planning on outlawing, which we were unanimous a year ago, to outlaw, any more apartments in the hamlet zones, which is where they have room to go. And that was undone a couple of, you know, there's no more moratorium. It was voted to remove it, it was a tie, it was broken. So, my big issue here is to have input from the community. So I think we kind of got to look at everything, but there isn't that much to really look at. I mean, we're full, except for, unless we're gonna take away. Now, we never touch residential, but you can do that by looking at ways to save open space. Example, you know, something I talked to Alan about, you can protect tillable land. You know what I mean? So, you know, so some of those farms, at least the tillables protect. There's ways to protect it. We've already implemented open space programs, but we use that money on 2 farms and we're broke. We can't keep using taxpayer money to do that, it's just not sustainable. So, I don't think you have a choice unless you're just, but you have to look at the whole thing, but there's not that much to look at because we're pretty full.
If we all sit down and look at the map and see exactly where we are. And
Right, what I think we've got to do is, we're gonna disagree on some areas, which is at least the way it's looking right now. But that's okay, so we can say, okay, this is A option, B option, let's see what the people say. I think that's
I think
the
if
way,
we let
right?
the people talk.
Right, that's kinda where we are, but yeah, I think you have to look at the whole thing. It's easy to say, you know, like town center, we only gotta go so deep in town center, it's already preliminary. You know, we have some negotiating power because they want a pilot, but other than that, it's pretty much approved. And that's 610 homes and 40 to 45 businesses, which is 10% growth. I would say we have 5,000 to 6,000 houses in the town now, roughly. Houses, not residents. Residents, right.
Single family?
So if you put,
I don't know.
right, so if you put 1,000, you've got 1,000 just in that area, that's 10% growth. Just one project.
So it sounds like, looking at, you know, complete update, right?
Right, you
of
definitely have
comprehensive
to.
plan.
But it's
Some
still not
things-
that big of a deal
Some
because.
things more than others,
Right,
right?
it's not like we haven't, we already know what's on the books, you can't change. So to me, even doing the whole thing, now, I don't know the answer to this, but by law, you have to have so many public hearings. How many is that, do you know?
By law, if just the town board were to take on the update itself and not appoint a special board or committee, it's a single public hearing.
Only one?
That's all that is required, that's the
Without
minimum
getting
requirement by
any
town
input.
No,
law.
you're gonna need more than one.
If you have a committee,
Yeah.
then the committee must hold a public hearing before advancing the comprehensive plan to you in draft form, and then you must hold another
Got
public
it, right.
hearing.
No, I mean, obviously, the whole idea
We
is.
strongly encourage. motion.
Right.
We've actually
But-
pursued
but
the
if I-
issue, so we recommend we leave it at the town board.
Sure,
What if-
and I think you can't go wrong with more input.
If I
in
may,
something like
Yes.
this.
during her presentation, she mentioned that there's a question of what is the minimum number of public hearings that you can have and actually update the plan? That's a very different question than what is the right number to have, in order to have enough public input at different stages along the way to make sure that the product you're coming up with is something that you feel is some connection to what the public thinks.
I agree.
And so one is almost certainly not anywhere near enough. It's not clear to me that 2 are either because, and I'll tell you what, the last public hearing is almost certainly going to be a result of you having something on the order of a draft proposed plan. And the last public hearing should have a chance for people to talk, but the chances are you're not going to be taking that input and making major changes. And that means that all that input has to take place in earlier ones to get you to that stage in the first place, right?
So you're thinking grants?
So I don't know. We're back to my original question, which is, before we can decide those kinds of things, we have to make some kind of determination of which pieces of that comprehensive plan we think we're going to actually be updating, and how much of a change we anticipate might be made, so that we can get an idea on how much effort this is gonna be, how long it's going to be, and therefore, how much money it's gonna cost to go about doing it. And I guess the question I was asking is, in your presentation, you have a number of municipalities, you've gone through this. I presume that in each one of those, at some stage, you presented them with proposals that says, we think it's gonna take this long, these are the recommended number of meetings we're gonna have, and this is how much we think it's gonna cost. My question was, how do we get to that proposal phase, and how much effort is involved in that, and how do you go about doing it? Because I don't know how that piece starts. I think I have a pretty good feel for once you get started, what's going on, right? The board would have to decide whether we're gonna do it all on our own, or whether we're going to form some sort of committee of a mix of people from our board and other places, and give them the object of doing that. When they do that, they're gonna have, either we or that group is gonna have to decide how many meetings to have, how they go about gathering information and making determinations and so forth and so on. I think I have a good feel for that process. It's the chunk that goes on between us putting our heads together and figuring out what we're gonna do that leads into that proposal and the timeline I'm confused about. And I was wondering, how does that work in places you've been? How long does that take? Is it a couple of meetings and it takes a couple of weeks? Is it a couple of months before you can even give us an estimate? How does that work?
I think, Alan, the best analogy is, you wanna do work on your house, you call a contractor and he gives you nothing, but you didn't tell him what you want. He said, I'll get it done for this much and this time.
Right.
So, I would speak in a large percentage, over 90% of comprehensive plan or any consulting work the town engages in is based on a meeting to discuss the scope, what your objectives are, or it's in response to a written RFP that goes out to consultants that are all proposing on the same thing. So it's always based on either a discussion that we've started right here this evening, or an RFP that goes out for just general solicitation. So I think this discussion is a good start. I think you as a town board need to agree on what you want looked at, and that could be a meeting amongst yourselves. If it's all five of you, you gotta hear the public meeting laws, or it's groups. We can facilitate those discussions on smaller levels, so we can sort of glean from that. And then once we understand what the board's end game is, then it becomes very simple for us to develop a scope schedule.
Okay.
As would be any consultant,
Right, or any project.
any project.
Right, now what do you think about like doing, obviously, like East Fishkill put signs on, I think they did a census, which is another good way to do it, to get info, because some people just aren't gonna come to it. But I agree with you that you're doing this because you want the people's opinion.
Yeah, so we do.
So
You want people.
Yeah.
well, that's right, well, that's what our job is.
It'll be
Right,
That's what our, isn't that what our job is?
Signs up and get everyone here.
So, I mean, I would say you probably should get three teams, but I think the census thing, putting whatever sign up saying, hey, we need your response by this, even if you spend the money to send everybody a checklist of the disputed issues, you know what I mean, obviously, but really, we're pretty cut and dry. This town has been developed pretty well. Our corridor's great, but we're facing, you know, a big town center, it's coming no matter what, you know, at some point, it's approved. We have a little negotiating power on down, you know, like I said, because they're seeking a pilot. A lot of the developments, you know, there's, like I said, probably a couple thousand houses approved in developments. That they can come in 2 years, they can come in 10, but they're approved, and that's what our job is, to approve them. And then they come when they come, right? It's just as simple as that. So I think it's a matter of notifying the public where we're at, what's approved. We don't have a moratorium right now. I think it's dangerous going through the process, because if I'm not mistaken, somebody can apply tomorrow to build an apartment complex, and then we decide we don't want that in our comprehensive plan. And they, but if they didn't put a shovel in the ground, the answer would be no, correct?
They have done substantial
Foundation,
improvements.
Which puts us in a, I think,
It is, you know, obviously it's a decision for all of you in terms of the moratorium aspect, and we have worked in communities that have gone both ways. Some have put a moratorium on for the duration of that process to develop the plan, and others have not. But the plan, the comprehensive plan and the comprehensive planning planning process does not, to your point, address projects that are in the pipeline or have been approved. It's really kind of looking ahead. But with that said, understanding those projects that are, I'm gonna say, in the pipeline, and the potential impacts are something that can be looked at, in terms of, services, in terms of your water, your sewer, and thinking about how future growth, might address, that growth, might address those issues as you're moving forward.
I think our town is in really good shape that way, right, Alan? I mean, like, we kind of know, except the cost of getting it paid for, but we have sewer and water. I mean, things gotta be built and designed, but we've got a good grasp on it. I mean, everything's designed for our town center. I mean, it's not like we're that far down the road, you know, right? I mean, do you agree with that?
Yeah, we have plans for both expansion of both water and sewer that take into account some portion of known and anticipated growth.
Right.
It's not unlimited, obviously.
Right. Well, that, at least for what's coming.
But it anticipates, what we know, I guess.
Right, the
We think-
development-
And even what we think. So, yeah, I would
Okay.
agree with that, I would agree with that.
So you kinda, I mean, do we need to talk more on scope, or you kinda get the scope?
We could certainly work through something based on this discussion.
Right,
We
right.
have a general idea what you want, and the way we would do it is sort of like an à la carte, like saying, here are the bare minimum, here are things that have impact on cost and schedule, the level of public engagement.
I think three.
Public hearings, honestly, public hearings are not a cost driver. That's your decision on how much you want to engage the public
Okay.
on the process. Other things that drive costs for anyone to do it are, to the extent you want things looked at, you know, in the developed condition, the future condition, is everything holistically. The existing conditions data, most of it's free. County planning, your data, it's just collected. That's not a cost driver. It's how you want to engage the public from us, you know, how we, you know, engage the public outside public hearings, and to extent what you want to look at in a future condition.
So
I
we'll
like
chat
it.
about that.
I like the idea that you said that you could give us kind of an à la carte and say, so you're talking about a menu of costs and say, if you want to do this, this, and this, it costs this much. I like
And
that
an
idea a lot.
understanding
I like
of the
that.
schedule.
That could be very useful.
as well.
Right.
No, I think this is good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Do we have other presentations
Yeah.
for tonight? Okay, you're up.
Do we have enough?
I think we do, yeah.
All right, great. Well, thank you Supervisor Bell and the Lagrange Town Board. I'm Eric Hooten, I'm the Business Development Representative in the Hudson Valley. And I'm joined tonight by my colleagues Charmaine John in our planning group, and Don Fletcher, one of our senior vice presidents that's in charge of that area of practice for sustainable planning and design. And we wanted to just go over the scope of supply that would be prepared for you, and that you've had time to review and talk to you about any questions or any, things that you might want to discuss. So I'll turn it over to Charmaine.
Hello everyone, my name is Charmaine John. I'm the Senior Staff Sustainability Specialist with Columbia Judas, and I work at the Albany office, and so I'm glad to be able to be here and discuss a little bit about what a comprehensive plan is, why it may be beneficial for Town of Lagrange to conduct one, and a little bit about what we have put together in terms of a proposal, and especially something that we're very proud of as a firm to engage with, community community engagement is a big part of a lot of our sustainable planning, including comprehensive plans, hazard mitigation plans, and such. And so I'll be giving you a little overview of that. So to start, why does Lagrange need to update their comprehensive plan? So there's a few points here, but first, as mentioned, our current plan is quite outdated. And some things to consider is what has changed in the past 20 years. Things like changes in policy, our economy, technology, climate change, population change, and of course, addressing that we had a COVID pandemic within the past 20 years. Another reason to do the plan, to get constituent buy-in for existing projects or current development projects or future projects as well. So comprehensive plans, they engage constituents in plans that already have occurred or what we want them to perhaps look forward to, or have them provide input on future plans as well. A comprehensive plan is by the constituents for the constituents. It raises awareness of town initiatives and avoids perhaps expensive conflicts from constituent voices that might occur when development has perhaps already occurred or started. A third very important aspect is it provides marketing for town of Lagrange. It strengthens the municipality's legal position when it comes to land proceedings. And it also increases chances of funding for the community by outside organizations. So essentially, having a comprehensive plan improves the community scores in grant applications, and we have actively seen this with a lot of clients that we work with in the Climate Smart Communities program. One of the base requirements is to have a comprehensive plan, which helps you gain more points to gain funding for your projects. Also, I'd like to mention, it provides direction to decision makers. It identifies priorities for capital projects such as housing, grocery stores, parks and policies. It's a necessary precedent for future zoning codes as well. And ultimately, when the plan is completed, it's not just for the decision makers to sit on the town board, but it supports developers, it supports community groups. A couple examples of clients that we've had, which we conducted comprehensive plans for. There was a historical society that was very involved with our community engagement, and using the comprehensive plan, they were able to get one of their historical buildings registered on the New York State Register, and they were also able to get grant funding. There was another community group that was looking to preserve a trout pond for recreation, and they were able to get grant funding for that as well, using the comprehensive plan as a basis. Another example is that it not only benefits town of Lagrange, but it benefits regional municipalities as well. I don't remember the name of the client, but the case study was that there was a rail trail that was able to be put up or discussed among different municipalities based on the comprehensive plan as well. So these are some of the potential projects or benefits that can come out of doing a full comprehensive plan. So if you flip on to the next page, you'll see the typical components. So what does a comprehensive plan look like? A lot of this was already discussed, but what I want to mention is on the BNL side, when it comes to creating a vision for what we want our community to look like, that is when we get constituent buy-in. We conduct multiple community engagement workshops. We have at least 2 public hearings in our proposal as well. When it comes to creating town goals, we want to hear from constituents. We want to see what their vision, what their aspirations for their community is. And that's how we put together now this is the final part, the future land use strategy. So for the future land use strategy, there's 2 parts. We're gonna look at where to develop and where to preserve. So where to develop, are we looking at housing, industrial, or commercial? Or where to preserve, are we looking for natural, cultural, or recreational areas? What's interesting about future land use strategy is that it doesn't only have to look at future visionary projects. It can include existing, standby, and future projects. So really this process is about getting community buy-in on what the town is already doing, but also getting input on what the town would like to do in the future. So if we move on to the next page here, this is a little bit about our proposal that BNL has put together. Phase one is where is the town today? So this is where we do a little bit of our initial county profiling, seeing what are the county assets, what plans already exist, but also doing a little bit of community engagement to see what are the constituents' thoughts. The second phase is where does Lagrange want to be tomorrow and how do we get there? So there's a lot of visioning and action item modeling when it comes to this phase, and we have 2 community engagement workshops as well in this phase. And then the last one is community feedback, revisions, and plan adoption, and this is where we conduct an open house that also occurs along with our first public hearing, as well as a second public hearing after the plan has been finalized and submitted to the town board. Essentially, for a plan like this, for the proposal that we have put together, our timeline is typically 1 year. Generally, BNL have conducted multiple comprehensive plans. In fact, we've done 30+ comprehensive planning efforts. Recently, we've done over 400 public engagement workshops, and we've done at least 10 land use and zoning projects. A little bit about BNL. Our firm has multiple practice areas. We have practice areas in asset management, environmental, solid waste, facilities, transportation, water resources, and sustainable planning and design. I get very lucky working in sustainable planning and design because I get to collaborate with almost every other practice area, and that's how we put together very comprehensive, very holistic, and very systems approach focused plans. Also, we have 400 employees. We're 400 employees strong. We have a lot of capacity. We have offices in Somers, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse. So we have a total of 15 offices across 5 states in the Northeast region. So if you flip to the next page, you'll see a map of New York, and it shows some of the other municipalities that we work with, putting together comprehensive plans, zoning codes, and in some cases, both at the same time. If you flip to the next page, I can discuss a little bit about the types of community engagement that we do. I had already mentioned workshops and open houses. Regarding specific site design or urban areas, we do something called design with charrettes, which allows constituents to really participate in the process in a more specific type of way. We could even do walkabouts, where it's like a walking tour where we gather constituents and we bring them to certain areas and discuss openly what the issues and what the potential future could look like, or what the vision for that area could look like as well. And as you can see from the photos, we like to host our community engagement either in person, which is very popular, but in areas where that isn't popular, we could do virtual or hybrid as well. We've set up at farmers markets before. We've had booths at public libraries. We could set up at community events. We could table at community events. And so our team is really great about thinking about creative ways for public engagement. And some of the deliverables regarding public engagement could be social media web pages, creating a site for the town to house everything related to the plan. We've conducted online surveys as well, and so there's a few different tricks we have with that. So at this time, I want to ask Don if he wants to add anything. If not, we could probably take some questions.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna introduce myself, Don Fletcher, Principal of Parker and Judas. Thank you for having us. A lot of the conversation is obviously similar to the previous presentation. I think one thing, a little different is we had some communication and discussions with some people here. So we have put a draft scope together. By no means is that final, or that is what it has to be.
Okay. Is it normal, like right now we're in a stage where we could boom continually in the next 24 months. Uncontested areas where the board is divided, and then they make a decision in the comprehensive plan that say, is it normal to like say, okay, let's look at this in 5 years and see where we are, let's see what the traffic impact from project A, B, and C, like where do you go, we're in our final push for the development of Lagrange, so do you look at every 5 years to say, okay, this corridor, you didn't allow something that could go, and then relook at that in 5 years, or like, how do you normally do things?
No question, I mean, it depends on the community, depends on the issues at hand, whether it's traffic, whether
And
it's.
that's what I'm hearing from the public.
Whether it's
They're concerned
infrastructure,
about
whether
traffic.
it's reviewing your infrastructure, water and sewer, you know, stormwater is much worse than it was before, we get the same amount of precipitation, but it doesn't come the same way than it did 20 years ago.
Like, that's gotta get looked at, but I think we're in good shape, like I said, anything that's planned, we're pretty good on sewer, obviously funds aren't figured out, but we're engineered, you know, we're, like town centers, you know, we figured that kind of stuff out.
I mean,
We're
ideally,
in
you're
good shape that way.
5 to 10 years, you're updating your comprehensive plan, you gotta look through your zoning, you know, what's the latest with your zoning codes?
Right.
You know, it could be short-term rentals, it could be cannabis, it could be renewable energies.
We're looking at that.
So, I mean, that's not an unreasonable time frame because that's as things change. Think about it, 5 years ago was COVID, right? So what's happened since COVID, that would have you that you want to look at?
Like
And
outside
sometimes you
dining
do very,
restaurants.
very specific things, right? You can work with the state or work with the county on what a, you know, a traffic study in a corridor would be. What is it looking like in there? What's the pedestrian improvements? What's the bicycle in that plan, right? What's traffic?
I think the biggest issue for the residents is gonna be traffic, schools, obviously taxes, you know, schools are gonna drive that. So population growth, those are gonna be the huge issues, I think, in our town, at least I think. Right, I mean, you agree?
Yes, sir.
So I think that's where, you know, there's some disagreement, and we've gotta figure out what the public really wants and how much we're willing to entertain. And I think that's, and I do think that's gonna have to have a full look. Obviously, town center, there's only so much you can look at, so it's not like you're gonna spend a ton of time there.
Because you know it's already been.
We did have you look at some stuff there already, though.
We did, we looked
Right.
at, we did a parking.
Parking stuff.
Parking study.
Okay, so that's, I mean, at least we're, I mean, I definitely think we have to look at everything at least quickly, you know, and clean up stuff, but our development is already pretty close, you know, we're not like, you know, we've come a long way in 20 years of development.
You know, it's not uncommon for the board to have a pretty good feel for the pulse of what community that they got elected in.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that it's not an important factor to have community engagement and feedback on a variety of different areas that maybe you didn't consider or think about, right? And that tends to drive some of those things too. When you get that data, then, you know, it empowers you to say, okay, this is really important to my community. Or this wasn't important 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, but it's really important now. Maybe we should take a second look at that. So those are big things, right?
Okay, all right, so we'll be in touch and get a correct scope and get back to you guys and.
Right, thank you for your time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We have one more.
Hi, everybody. So, my name's Cassidy. Bonnie Franson, one of the partners from our office. What she just handed out is a proposal that Mr. Perry submitted to the town last week, just in case anybody needed hard copy. We'll skip going through what a comprehensive is, because MJ and DNL really have that covered, unless anybody has any specific questions. The proposal that we provided, going back to the scope of the project, is based on my understanding from working in the town, what the town is looking for, but of course, that can be modified if I didn't understand that correctly. So, sorry. One of the, topics that we've heard throughout the evening is the importance of the public participation for this board specifically. When looking through our proposal, we have one public workshop and 2 public hearings proposed, as well as an online survey, which we found really helps bring out those people that wouldn't necessarily come to a meeting to discuss or don't have the ability to come to a meeting to discuss. That online survey really provides an outlet for them. Additionally, we recommend generally the creation of comprehensive plan committee as a way for the, town board to appoint these people who wouldn't be sitting at this table generally. The planning board, the town board, members of the public, business owners, to have that specific input. We recommend, or we propose in this plan to have regular meetings with that comprehensive plan committee. You'll see in our timeline that our schedule is typically a year to 15 months, which can be adjusted, but that was created that way as a way to really give these committees and these public hearings and surveys time to develop. We have worked on many comprehensive plans in the area, and I have a good grasp of the local area in Essex County. We are currently Georgetown Planning, as well as the town of Hyde Park, the town of Clinton, and we're working on the downtown revitalization initiative in the city of Quincy. We have 8 families in our Hudson Valley office, and we are planning specific firms. So this is what we do all day, every day, comprehensive plans, and planning initiatives. You know, we really understand that connection between this comprehensive plan and potential zoning changes in the future, as well as potential opportunities for funding in the future and grant projects. We do have an engineering firm that we are affiliated with out of Long Island. We would prefer to work closely with the engineers that already work with the town of Lagrange to have a better grasp of the area, but if needed, we can bring in that firm as well. Anything else that you want to share?
I think, again, comprehensive plan, we were, Bonnie Branson, partner with us at Pope and Voorhees, and I believe that, once before. We are I call it a boutique planning firm. We focus on planning, we focus on the environment. We've done many municipal plans. I think what we especially appreciate is in town law, the purpose of a plan are twofold. One, once you adopt a plan, your zoning must be consistent with that plan. So it's important oftentimes that, in fact, you're talking about doing a plan, you may want to adjust the zoning, but as you get to the end point of the plan, you may want to start some zoning initiatives before you even adopt it, because you don't want them to be inconsistent. Oftentimes we do the zoning and the plan together, so there's one secret process. I'm not sure that I've heard that this evening, but you do have to go through the environmental review process. And so it's more cost efficient to do it for both if you're able to, and you want to fold in some zoning initiatives. Yes.
If, this may be a confused question. You mentioned that the updating of the comprehensive plan may and likely will drive changes in the code, right? If you're updating the comprehensive plan and you don't update your code, does that process still require secret?
Yes.
Just to adopt the plan?
Yes.
And so the advantage of, as you're putting your comprehensive plan together, of anticipating what zoning is going to need to be changed to be consistent with that, the advantage of doing those together is you can have combined seeker and instead of essentially doing one and then having to do the other.
Correct. In fact, we're doing that right now in the Village of Washingtonville, and we're also doing that in the Village of Greenwood Lake. Both of them in Orange County. Slightly different processes. For Village of Washingtonville, we got through the comprehensive plan. That was with the committee, and then kind of laid that down, went to the village board to update the zoning, and then brought it all back together to have a public hearing on the comprehensive plan and the zoning. So it was one public hearing on both documents. And then the seeker analysis was for both documents. And so we're in the last stages. In Greenwood Lake, they have a committee that is working right now on a plan, but they also are separately with a smaller subgroup working on the zoning so that these things come together. And so and there's, an interrelationship between those two committees. And that's happening because it's been some time since zoning was updated. And there are changes that need to be made, never mind, you know, big zoning changes or even little zoning changes, use changes. Sometimes zoning codes, and I suspect yours isn't like this, but sometimes zoning codes get dated, they don't reflect, town law, whether it's site plan or special use permit or subdivision regulations. You know, they're just processes that sometimes need to be updated. And so the smaller subcommittee is dealing with that in addition to them looking at just some of the nuts and bolts that they've had to deal with, you know, for quite some time, so that they can do these in parallel. So the processes can happen at the same time. Our understanding at this point was that you wanted to focus on the comp plan. The other important aspect of doing the plan is the funding. As Megan, you know, alluded to, we're retained by New York State Department of State to do the downtown revitalization program plans. That's a 5-year contract. We already did, we're working on, we finished up City of Port Jervis, and, we got the grants, for the town of Boston and the big ones in the village of Haverstraw. So those were DRIs, those were $10 million grants. We also, have been working on the Dobbs Ferry comprehensive plan, wrote the grant application. Dobbs Ferry was awarded the New York Forward. And I think you need to think about that funding, which is an important element, because you're talking about this town center that exists. And that if it happens and it evolves, there are monies there that you could be tapping into for maybe certain improvements that would further enhance what it is you're trying to achieve. And we know from the last funding cycle that it was really geared toward, and there was a housing policy you had to pass that you were pro-housing. And I think you already have that built in. So that's kind of one hurdle that you already need. So again, from a planning perspective, comp plan is really important from the zoning perspective and from a funding perspective as well. We did build in, as Megan indicated, online survey. Our experiences, they're nurses, you know, they're firefighters, they're people who work down in the city. And it might not be easy for them to get to a scheduled workshop. So with the comprehensive plan committee, we create an online survey so they have access to it. But we still provide paper copies. So there may be some local residents, they don't feel comfortable getting online, filling out a survey, they fill it out, we pick them up, and then we enter it into our database and present the results. We do a workshop, we call them workshop stations, workshops where we invite everybody to the workshop, and the comprehensive plan committee decides what questions it wants to pose to the participants. And we found that a couple of benefits. One is that many people don't want to just get up, they're intimidated, they don't want to speak, you know, in front of a formal board like this. Workstations are where they go up to different easels, different locations, they talk directly to the planners, and they don't feel uncomfortable expressing their opinion. And so that's the one benefit. The other we found in one of our communities, that your attorney may know, Pam Shondo, was that we had a workshop. It was a Saturday, and many people came out, and the full town board attended. And the public loved it, because it wasn't that you were participating per se, you were there in support, and it was just an opportunity for people to come and talk to their board members, and talk about whatever little issues they may have. And so it was just a very informal setting, but people didn't feel intimidated. So we like those kinds of interactions. We also do tabling. We did the town of Poughkeepsie comp plan right before COVID, like literally, and I think we did the Jingle Nog, December, cold, out there tabling, you know, asking people what do they think are the issues and opportunities for the community. So there are many ways to get input. An element of our scope is to create a participation plan where we ask the comprehensive plan committee, know in your community, what do you think are the best ways to get input? But we did build in, because we wanted to give your proposal with an order of magnitude, what would this cost? We built in a workshop, and also the online survey, in addition to the, required public hearings, both at the comprehensive plan committee level as well as the town board level, as required.
Is there a way to keep the online survey accurate so you know that you're getting one request or one answer from each household?
So, in one community, if you have particular bills that go out to the entire community, we actually gave the households numbers.
Right, so there was a way to keep track.
There was a way to track, and so if you saw a number that you hadn't generated, then you know it's maybe not from the community. It may be that one household may use that number 2 or 3 times because there are 2 or 3 people in that household. Which is
At
fine.
least you know it's coming from that household, so there's a way to.
Yes. Our online surveys, if you don't wanna do that, we do ask, and it's the honor system, are you a resident, are you a business person? You have to decide as a community whether you want that survey to be, broader than the community. What if there are people that reside in, the town of Poughkeepsie that work here, or that have businesses here? I don't know about the interrelationships. What about people who visit, the town? If you want to get broader input, we can set the survey up to ask questions like, are you a resident? How long have you lived here? There's some basic demographics you always want to ask in the beginning. But if you really want to keep it tight to the community, we would recommend sending out mailers or sending it out to the households here, to be able to do that. And we would work with you on that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is a presentation from Delaware engineer, Ezra.
Well, good evening. 3 presentations, you guys are courageous. We're not here to talk about comp plans. We were invited, as I understand, to talk about our firm's expertise within the water and wastewater arena. And my name is John Bruss. I'm the principal of the firm. 2 of my colleagues, 2 of my buddies, Bill Bright. Bill is a resident of the town at the northern end. And he's also a resident savant when it comes to water and wastewater operations. And he's pretty familiar with your systems. I think you'll see that. He'll tell you about that a little bit. And Glenn Amrod, who's up in Red Hook, runs our Red Hook office. His nickname is Glenny. He's an electrical engineer. And if you do work with us, Glenny's going to be your project manager, no doubt, working with Bill and other staff. When people think of Delaware engineering, they think of water, wastewater. We have, for the past 40 years, pretty much stayed in our lane. About 80%, 85% of our revenues are just that, water and wastewater. We put a bow around it. We have the permitting and regulatory people that help boards like you figure out what you want to do and what's possible, and the regulatory procedures for getting where you need to get. We also have once we get into design, we have all the PEs that are necessary. That's civil, process, electrical, controls, HVAC, structural. We've got all the necessary expertise in-house. We have a staff now of 75, and our offices allow us to work a lot within the Hudson Valley. Our offices, Albany, Goshen, Red Hook, Monticello, Portchester, and then Oneonta is more on the other side at the middle of the state. We have all the engineering expertise to get you through design, but then we also have a 17-person construction group within the firm. We have 16 construction inspectors, many of whom worked for municipalities in their past lives as DPW directors or water or wastewater operators. And then they're led by two people that came from the construction industry. We do about $400 million a year in water and wastewater construction. And then once we've helped the municipality construct it, we then have operators on staff that can help you operate it. We spend a lot of, and we also have two government relations firms on retainer that help us position our clients, either for getting through the regulatory process, because New York State's a tough place to do work sometimes, or to help position our clients for funding. This town, the good news is, a pretty affluent town. From a grant perspective, people walk in here and say, I know that I got the special key to get you grant money. They're not telling you the truth. You've got a low LMI, a low to moderate income, I think it's 23%. You've got an MHI, at least in the overall town, of about 120,000. You're not a disadvantaged community. You're also not a environmental justice community. I don't think you don't have your pro-housing status. And all of those things are keys to getting funding, but they're not the only keys. There are other ways to get funding. That could be working with New York State, Empire State Development, or it could be looking at some of your individual census tract areas and seeing if any of them could apply, could be applicable under our funding rules. I made copies for you of, here's all you need to know about infrastructure funding in New York State when it comes to the different grant programs. There's a whole listing there. And then I also made a copy today. This is a document, it's an internal document, but we have some funding deadlines at the end of this month. And so we're always keeping track of all of our municipal clients and where they are in position for either the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, or any other grants that make sense. What you'll see on that list is a lot of the communities that we work for. What I guess the purpose of showing you that list is we work for about 125 municipalities, and that means, and those municipalities on that list in front of you are going through the process right now. That means we work with the DEC, DOH, ESC, ESD, and all the other agencies in New York State to make these kind of projects happen. Rest assured, we have great contacts there, to make these happen. There's some SOQs with some project cards and things like that we also made for you. And then I'm going to turn it over to Bill to talk a little bit about his familiarity with water, wastewater in the town of Lagrange. Thank you. Bill.
Hi, my name's Bill Wright. I live on Cole Road in Lagrange. I lived there about 40 years. I started, my first job ever was at the Titusville wastewater, working for a company called Chemical Pollution Control. I'm very familiar with the town of Lagrange. I've operated the Lagrange facilities in the 1980s for Art McCluskey and for George Wade. Carol DeVellis was the town clerk, who's kind of like the boss. And so I'm very familiar with all your facilities. I sold my company. I owned a company that operated about 150 facilities. Stephen Nance, who worked for you for many years, was my CFO. I sold my company to a British company and went to work for Delaware Engineering about 27 years ago. Now I'm the old guy there.
I know the film.
I was the young guy then, sorry.
Bill has to keep on working or else I'll be the old guy.
So, I'm just very familiar with your facilities, very familiar with I've talked to a bunch of your operators, and I've known your operators over the years. Living on Cole, I live here, so you know this town, and pretty much everybody knows what's going on. We all know what's going on.
So you designed the the last update of the Titus board?
I did not, that was Chase that did the original design.
Right, Paul.
And then, actually the MBR the SBR that went in there was from, New Zealand.
Right.
And
That
it was the
failed.
only one installed in America.
Yeah.
And I don't
And it
want,
failed.
and I don't ever want to be, I was very good friends with the person who put the concrete in.
Right.
That was Jet Industries, Matt Satapani. And he didn't bid on the second phase because he didn't think it would work. So that's 20-year-old story.
Right.
I mean, so, but everybody knew it in the industry.
Right.
But it was just one of those things that, we try not to do those things. We try to have operators review all our plans. We have a lot of operators that work at our engineering firm. I could have worked anywhere when I sold my company. I decided to work with Delaware because they are a wastewater and a water firm. We talk a little bit about perfluoroalkyl substances, PFOAs, or forever compounds. Pretty much they're everywhere, and they're some level in most all water supplies. In 2029, a new regulation is going to come in, which basically says that they have, your results have to be non-detect for parts per trillion. So even your systems that meet the 10 parts per trillion now won't be the 10. And quite frankly, I wouldn't want to drink water that had any of it anyway. I think it's a real issue. It's not. I've been through a lot of different issues, but because of what these compounds do and what they've been proven to do with human testing, not rat testing or beagle testing or monkey testing, with human testing. They've done cohort studies with 70,000 people, and then they've proven that they are human carcinogens. So when we design to remove 100% of the PFAS, because you don't want to, like, how much poison are you willing to drink? I mean, so we're doing about a $4.5 million water plant right now in the town of Lewisboro in Westchester County, and that is most PFAS plants are grant qualified for up to 75%. We got even greater level there. We had a $3 million congressman grant. Congressman actually was a member money. Plus we got I think 170,000, 1.7 million from EFC to build that plant, and that's for about 500 people, and they have like 3 wells that are contaminated out of their 6 wells that are there, and we're going to put this filtration system in. We're going to use granular activated carbon. So the interesting thing about that is it'll remove the PFAS, but it'll also remove a lot of other contaminants that are in the water that they're at such a low level, they're below the contaminant level, but we don't know what they're doing to the human body when they're in there. So I believe that once we start filtering with this PFAS, with granular activated carbon, it might have an impact on how much cancer is being produced. I mean, that's just my own opinion. So that's one of the, that's kind of one of the things I've kind of jumped on as something that I think is important. You have one facility with PFAS filtration. I think it's Johnson Water.
Yeah, Johnson Water.
Yeah.
That's the one we addressed, right?
Yes,
Yes.
that's the one that
Right.
we've got.
Correct.
Now, you probably that project would probably qualify for at least 75% funding for grants, because of the health department usually funds emerging contaminants, and then usually, if you work with them, you'll get pretty decent funding. We're doing, we've done some work in Pleasant Valley. Pleasant Valley is tough, they have a lot of contamination, and so there is grant money available for emerging contaminations. That's a little
Now, if you already started the project, could you still be available?
Excuse me?
If you already started the project, would you be able to get funding
I
still
don't
or
know.
no?
If emerging contaminants go to the head of the parade right now. So the other constraints that I mentioned about the town, they don't really apply when it comes to emerging contaminants. So we have to talk about that.
Yep.
Figure out how to
Okay.
position it. One thing that, I don't believe the town is on the IUP for any projects. And so-
Intended use plan.
yeah, and sometimes communities don't do that because working with New York State ESC is somewhat expensive. You have MBE participation, WB participation. Sometimes you might have a veterans participation. There are closing costs and so on and so forth. So if a community doesn't think that it's gonna get any grant money, or in your case with your MHI number being elevated, which is great, you're not gonna get hardship money, then communities think, I'm not gonna get on the IUP, why waste my time?
Right.
But if you wanna get any congressional money, you have to be listed on the IUP. The first thing your congressman or congresswoman is gonna say is, do you have a project on the IUP? So if you're thinking about doing a capital project, whether you're considering listing it, or going after ESC money, whether you consider that or not, I would get it on the IUP because it opens up other opportunities. Sometimes there are those communities that are trying to attract manufacturing. Part of that process is working with New York State Empire State Development. When you work with New York State Empire State Development, the first question they ask you is, do you have a project listed on the IUP? So again, think about that. If you are planning on doing capital projects, I would get that listing on there and then try to avail yourself of that congressional money.
You said it was expensive though to be on the IUP?
No.
Oh.
There are two pieces to the IUP. One is called a multi-year list.
Right.
Those are sort of aspirational.
Right.
And then there's a list called the annual list. To get on the annual list, you have to do an engineering report. So you typically have to spend 50 grand to get on the annual list. But now you've got an engineering report done.
Right.
You're serious about doing a project. But you could do a multi-year IUP listing. It's a form. Get it in. Congressman Molinaro just got us $1 million to help the town of Liberty, and we did that. The town of Liberty doesn't have the opportunity to spend any of its own money. They're not an affluent community, but got it on the IUP, and Congressman Molinaro was able to get us $1 million. So do that.
I know town, you were right about that because of our ratings. Town center developer applied for all grants. He hired a professional grant writer and he got denied them all.
Yeah, it's interesting. New York State, you have to really know how the system works to get money for economic development projects. It's ironic, isn't it? We got a lot of people leaving the state. You think we would be more adept at keeping people here and helping communities with infrastructure, because without water and sewer, you don't have economic development. Well, we don't do a good job at that. But there are ways to get grant funding for economic development projects. Sometimes they take a little while. The town of Liberty, Village of Liberty, Old Route 17 corridor, we had to do a generic environmental impact statement. We had to locate 5 industrial parks, potential industrial parks. We spent $300,000 or $400,000 doing that. But at the end of the day, we went to Empire State Development and said, but for water and sewer, we could be attracting businesses to this corridor. 4 months ago, we got a $20 million grant to advance water and sewer, and it was 90%. But that took 3 years of work.
Right, but Liberty's kind of, I don't know what their rating is, but it's not like ours.
No, that is independent of
Oh, it is?
independent of everything. but you had to do a generic environmental impact statement. I
Right.
guess what I'm getting at is, there's different ways to skin the cat.
Right.
There's different approaches to take. If you had a developer, and you need capacity at your water and wastewater treatment plants, then we negotiate agreements with our developers so they have a little bit more skin in the game, and then we figure out how, how to get the project done. We usually start our water and wastewater projects out, I was just gonna say, like, two things. We usually start our water and wastewater projects out with your user rates. So we look at what people are paying now, we look at what they can reasonably pay, where the pushback is, where it makes sense, and then you design a project based upon amortizing that amount of capital, and how many grants can I get? And you do up a financial model with, if we got CDBG, and if we got WIA, and we got this, and we got the developer, and then the town was in, our user rates are gonna go from $600 to $700, and people go, you know what, that's okay. Right? If they're gonna go from $600 to $1,800, no, it's not okay. So then we figure out a different way to skin the cat. Sometimes that is, we know how much things are gonna cost, we put that on a shelf, and we wait for the right time, and we take it off the shelf and go get that money when the opportunity presents itself. But you have to have that stuff on the shelf, and in your case, you should be on the IDP. I'm sorry, go ahead, Glenn.
Especially for your wastewater plant, the municipal plants. I mean, it's gonna be reaching its useful life soon, and I know it's a hard plant to operate. I talked to your operators, they're exhausted.
That's part of town center upgrade,
Oh, okay, well then that plant.
which
is
you
gonna
did
be-
apply for grants and didn't get.
Yeah, well, we don't, we'll see we would see what grant you went after, how you went after it.
I mean, he hired a pro to do it.
That's what we are.
Right. Well, that's what he did, and he didn't get it.
Well,
I'm just
like I
trying to-
said, I would get it, you need to be on the IUP.
Right, that, I got
And
told.
we're not on it.
Right.
And then we go to-
50 grand.
And then no, remember the multi-year was just a form.
Right.
That-
Right,
that's
just get
easy.
on it, you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna check on it.
The
I
annual
mean, they
list-
should have caught that, right? His
Say-
grant writer should have caught that. That you're like, gotta be on the.
Remember, for a little while, we were not doing, as a country, we were not doing congressional memorandums. That disappeared for 7 or 8 years. It's now back. So that's not necessarily grant writers.
Okay, it's new.
That's right. Remember, we
Got it.
used to have memorandums for forever. Well, they went away 3 years ago. I don't want to say they went away in the
Oh,
Obama.
yeah.
They went away in the Obama administration. So memorandums went away, now they're back. And they've been in place for 2 or 3 years.
And that's what the
Yeah.
Lewisboro got, a $3.2 million memorandum grant.
And it's not an additional $50,000 for an engineering report. It's $50,000 for an engineering report that you're gonna do for the project anyway.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's not extra.
Got it.
Questions, anything, I mean,
You said you'd walk around the plants for me and look at them and
we
see where
will
deficient.
certainly go and look at the plants and come up with a prioritized list of what we see and what we think and, yes,
And we can go from there.
yeah.
Right, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda is a resident who asked to speak about concern, Willie,
I want to thank the town board for allowing me time to hear my concern, which I thought was resolved last fall. I have been a homeowner in Harrison Street and other buildings since 1981. Recently, I witnessed my neighbor and town board member restarting the operation of a commercial well in direct violation of the town board ruling chapter 233, article 1, non-public water supply and distribution facilities. This violation concerns section 233-3 and set of the governing body requirement. On April 24th, I personally witnessed a minimum of 8 Gilmore water tankers going in and out of Ryan's property by the gravel bank. This rate of water removal occurred within a few hours. I want the board to understand that Fillmore water tankers can be observed going in and out of the Ryan property on most days of the week. There are approximately 20 homes in the immediate area that rely on private wells without the possibility of public water. Therefore, the continued unlawful operation of this commercial well can result in a dire water problem for our neighborhood. Thank you for your time and attention to this critical matter.
Thank you.
Would you like to read it?
Yes,
Would you like
please.
to- I'm gonna give you a copy. Can I just ask a question? Was it just open this April?
Yes, April 24, 2025.
You got a comment on this?
Thank you.
Selling liquor since 1995.
Illegal.
No.
Yes.
So you're
We've
moving
made
forward
that clear
with the
multiple
total
times,
change?
actually. Thank you. Next up, we have a number of requests from our Director of Parks and Rec. You want to walk us through it?
First, we have a presentation, trail presentation.
Okay.
Okay. Our presentation will be shorter.
It's a good way to start.
No pause. Okay. Our presentation this evening, I'm honored to share the floor with Hank Osborne, who is behind me. Hank is the Director of Programs for the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference. He has been there for 14 years. I'm going to start the presentation, then I will be turning it over to Hank, and he will explain a little bit about his organization at that time. I do have a few members of our Recreation Advisory Board who have graciously agreed to be here with me tonight, sat through all of the presentations, and are here because we have so many important things on the agenda. So Paul Doherty, Melissa Wagner, Mike Kalashik, thank you guys very much for being here. The project we're talking about tonight, and in a few minutes, an agenda item, is a trail project at Stringham Park that we have been discussing for a number of years. It actually is a trail that was a vision of Peter Huff, our former Parks and Recreation Director here before I started, who was your director for 29 years. Peter was responsible for so much of the development of the parks here in the town of Lagrange, and if you knew Peter, he was a trail guy through and through. The project that we are working on now, planning and the implementation of, with the great help from Hank, who will share that with you in a couple of minutes, is a project that was Peter's vision. It is a trail design project that goes up over the hillside that neighbors the Meshawat development. So it is a shared project with the Rotary Club and the Parks and Recreation Department. We again talked about it for many, many months, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that in a little bit. The way that Hank came to this project with us, Hank is a neighbor of Stringham Park. He's a resident of the town of Lagrange for just 4 years now. He lives right adjacent, did I say Freedom? Sure. So I got a lot of park projects going on. He's a neighbor to Stringham Park. He lives right adjacent to the park, and as we came to know him, he really became involved with us in Parks and Recreation, and we were very grateful for that. He has worked together with me and with my parks crew to realign and to really adjust some of the boundaries at Stringham and to readdress the trail markers there. Our boundaries and our markers were incorrect. We have made it more favorable to park users and to the landowners, and through that process of getting to know him and working together, we found out his involvement with trails, and that involvement is vast, and truly his talent with trail design through his organization. We had a meeting a year ago now, and during that meeting when we talked about this trail project, and it developed into where we are today, where he has graciously volunteered his trail design services on this project, and that comes to the tune of the savings of the town to $10,000 to $15,000 in professional design services. So we are incredibly grateful. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Hank. He has a map I'll pass out for you actually, if that's helpful.
The handout doesn't have a staple, it's just a single page.
Front and back.
Front and back. So you can, I will let Hank now, while I'm passing this out, explain to you really what the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference is. It's an incredible organization. They've done really vast projects here in Hudson Valley. And then he can talk to you specifically about what this trail is going to look like and the work that he's done so far, and then I'll jump back in again.
All right, thanks, Sandy. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. And I'm the director of programs at the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, and we manage trails in 250 different parks. So we have over 2,000 miles of trails that we're in charge of in this region of New York. And our mission at the Trail Conference is to improve access to public open space. And the organization has been doing this same thing for over 100 years. We were founded in 1920, so we're 105 years old. And this is my 14th year working for the Trail Conference. And I manage the trail layout and trail design and trail building departments. And I'm also a resident of Lagrange, and I'm also a member of the Lagrange CAC. And when I heard that there was an interest in developing a trail along the hillside east of Spring Park, I was very excited because I'm a neighbor of the park and I love trails. And adding public access to a hillside is something that I do. Is the type of work that I do professionally, and providing public access to open space is basically it's my passion. I truly believe that people are better off if they can get outdoors and be in nature a little bit. So my company really is the regional authority on trail design and trail layout, and we have several teams of professional trail builders that could be hired by towns to lay out and design trails, and the thing is we have a very long wait list to do that, and I know that because I work there, and I really want this project to happen, and I want it to happen fast, and so I invested in this project so that to save time and money, I am able to volunteer to do the trail layout design and trail building, so as a volunteer. So what will the trail be like? So the experience along the top of the ridge to the east of Spring Park, it is clearly completely different than the park below. It offers a completely unique activity compared to the many things that are offered at Spring Park already. The character of the new trail would contrast completely with the current perimeter trail that goes around Spring, which is wide and very flat. The surface is very smooth and even paved in most of it. The new trail would be more rugged, it would be more narrow, and there's also elevation that would be gained or lost at either end of that ridge. It's about 100 feet of elevation. So, yeah, but the trail would not be too steep at the end because they're able to utilize switchbacks. But using that trail, your heart rate would go up, and you can really get exercise if you walk it quickly. But there's a few year-round views from the hilltop. There's really amazing views in the winter, but in the full-on summer, you can still see to the east and over towards Connecticut, see to the west, when we're towards the river. You can't see that, so lots of farms and fields and hillsides. It's very pretty. And the trail alignment, especially at the southern end as it gets near the National Park development, the trail alignment, we were able to find a way to stay away from the boundaries to separate the Harvest Ridge housing development, because we were able to keep the trail away from the development to avoid any experience of feeling close to any building. So the goal is to feel like you're in the woods and not near houses. And in closing, every time I bring someone up on the hill to work on the trail, they're blown away by the beauty of that ridge line. The ecosystem up there is different than it is just 100 feet below. The trees are different. There's moss up there, outcroppings of rocks are really pretty. And it's it's really like another world just up there, yet it's only, this trail that I'm talking about is only gonna be half a mile long, and it'll only take 15 to 20 minutes to hike the whole thing, but it's a really neat experience, and thanks to the consultation and multiple site visits from Lagrange Rotary Club and the members of the CSC, we have completed the development of a really excellent trail alignment. We've been able to figure out pretty much exactly where the ideal place for this trail is to go. So the exact route's well on the way, and the people that have gone up there with me already are they only express how amazing it is, but also that they're excited to help with the next phases, which would be to work on the tread of the trail itself and make some improved places to walk. In many cases, nothing even has to happen. It's just really nice trail already. And then the final phase of the process would be to introduce the markings of the route. So the trail blazes, or that would probably be something like plastic discs with a name on them, trail wayfinding blazes. So my last sentence is, this new experience will be an incredible resource for our community. Thank you, and please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for your input.
Yeah, just one note for everybody's benefit. New York state law, as part of subdivisions, requires that people who are putting in subdivisions are required to dedicate some kind of land to the town for parking. The town has the option of instead assessing recreation fees to those subdivisions if no suitable land is determined. Our planning board almost universally does that, and the rationale behind it is pretty straightforward, right? Our town does not want to have 32 little parks to maintain all over the place. And so in most cases, we accept the recreation fees, which is some amount per lot, and then we use that money for park projects, buildings, and purchasing land, or a variety of things. That's where that money comes from when Sandy asked us to use LPI money. That's what that LPI money is. Now, none of us know what LPI stands for, just so you know. It's one of those acronyms, everybody knows what it is, but we have no idea where it came from. And in any event, that's where that money comes from. Now, in the case of this park, the two developments that flank this, one being Harvest Ridge, which is the one that you referred to as the Neshwa one, and the other one, the one that you live in, both of those donated land instead of rec fees. The first development donated the land, which created String Park with the soccer fields and all that. That land came from that development. This 19 acres was taken from Harvest Ridge with the express purpose of being added to the park, and the idea behind it was to put in trails and recreational activities on it. So I just wanted you to understand where this stuff came from, how it links to that law. And most people think that it works exactly the opposite. Most people think you have to pay rec fees, and if you want, you can dedicate land in lieu of that. The law actually works the opposite way. They're required to donate land, and we get to decide if we want rec fees instead of them. In most cases we do, because as I said, somebody's putting in a 12-lot subdivision. We don't want a half-an-acre park sitting there that we have to figure out how to maintain and so forth and so on. So we take that money and we use it to expand the large parks and make them better, and that's how that whole system works. But these two pieces, I mean, the entire soccer park came from one of those developments, and I just wanted people to kind of be aware of where they come from, where this land came from. But thanks. Anybody have any questions?
Some final comments that I would like to make. I failed to mention the CAC before, and I know that Hank mentioned them. John Stoner is here tonight, and certainly another trails guy, if I may refer to you as such. He leads a few of our hikes throughout the year, and the CAC has also been instrumental in this. And I know we're just going to love this project when it's completed as well. It might just be a new destination for one of our hikes. Probably not after dark though. But I've only been halfway up with Hank so far on this trail, and what he says is so true. It's just such a different perspective. It's phenomenal. You only have to go halfway up to suddenly get a full new picture of that property. And the picture that's been on the website at different times from the drone, it's just like you almost feel like
The main webpage for this town is, features a really nice portrait of a valley. But right behind is looking south over String Park, and the whole side of this town's webpage is this hillside that we're talking about.
Yeah, it's really remarkable. So, we spoke a little bit when we were planning and talking about this, about some associated expenses. We do have to get the blazes that he talks about, which will be the trail markers, once we decide the name, which we'll be doing here in a couple of moments. And there's some special nails that we have to use for fixing those trail markers. And then there will be some kiosk signage at the beginning and end of each end. We haven't decided yet what we want to use. I may be coming back to the board and requesting some LPI funds we just explained for those. That's not yet determined, but sometimes those kiosks are a little pricier, and that was not put into my operating budget, but we can use LPI funds for that type of expense. The last thing I want to say is on the agenda is the second item. I don't know if you want to do it out of order, but the agenda item that is associated with this presentation is formally requesting of the board to name this the Peter Huff Trail. So if you vote to do that this evening, that would be a fantastic call that I would get to make, to reach out to Peter, who now lives up in Maine. Paul knows where Peter lives. But our plan is to, Hank feels that we can complete this trail, and if you vote to name it Peter Huff Trail, this evening we will order custom trailblazers that will state the Peter Huff Trail, and that's how we will mark the trail. And I'll get to make that phone call and let him know that, it's been 11 years in the making, but here we are.
I'd like to make a motion for it.
Yeah, we'll do that when we get, we'll
So-
keep doing things in order.
Yeah, so that's
fine.
but that's the intended purpose, that's the timeline we're looking at this fall for ribbon cutting when the project is complete.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you.
All right. Next up is,
I can submit my comments to.
Oh, sure. Thank you so much.
all right. So, Sandy has a number of things on here, and we'll walk through them one at a time. The first one is a request for awarding bids for equipment. Do you want to walk us through that, Sandy?
Yes. These I put out, did our pricing research. The stand-on blower is actually on state contract at Reardon Briggs. So that's a state contract price. The mule is not a contract item, but we researched through 3 different vendors, and that is the low price at Duchess Rec for $10,482. Those two came in just slightly below the budget that I had submitted last year.
Okay. Do I have a motion to award the bids? Second, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Carried. Next is a request to name the trail the Peter Huff Trail. I think we have a motion from Richie. Do we have a second? I'll make that second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Carried. Next, we have a couple of the usual requests for fee waivers from nonprofit type organizations. The first one is a request from the Goals of Hope Committee, and they want to use Stringham Park for a soccer tournament, which is a fundraiser, and they're asking us to waive the fees. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Carried. Next, a similar request for waiving fees for use of the Freedom Park Pavilion by the Lagrange Historical Society.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Next, a request for Freedom Park to have the fees waived by Overlook Primary School.
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That's carried. Next up has to do with request for engineering design funds. You wanna walk us through this one?
Okay.
Yeah.
If you know anything about me, you've heard me talk about anything in rec board meetings or town board meetings in the last 18 months especially. I've been talking to you about the need of our senior population for a senior citizen center. I have pounded the pavement and looked at every available piece of commercial space. Thought I got close to 2 of them as a potential rental, and then they were gone like the wind. And one of them is now the new Playa Bowls, which I highly recommend, by the way. The other one is, I don't know what it's gonna be. It's next to Simply Gourmet, and thought we maybe had a chance at that. What has ramped up for me over the last couple of months is that Dutchess County has out now a municipal investment grant, an amount of $500,000, which is specifically for new construction or redesign or alteration of existing space, specifically for senior citizen programming, for senior citizen centers. And I was like, oh my goodness. That's a lot of money to leave on the table. Town of Lagrange desperately needs this. How can I figure this out? So I was actually in a meeting of another board that I'm on, and I was having a conversation with another county legislator from my old district, and it came up what another municipality was potentially doing, and all of a sudden I just was like, and it was something they were doing in one of their parks. So I pulled back and I stopped and looked at every one of our parks, and it brought me to Overlook Park, a completely underutilized park. And I said to myself, what can we do to alter our existing building? Can we do an addition? And I immediately went in and sat down with Alan. It's like, if we can't find rental space, it's certainly better to get money and invest in yourself, in your own space. Overlook Park is currently used for fishing a couple of times a year, which is a weekend activity, and for football and cheerleading, which happens again on the weekends at a certain time of year. Senior citizen centers operate weekdays, generally from 10 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Nobody is in that park, other than if they're sitting there having lunch or occasional person fishing or somebody doing something maybe they're not supposed to do. But no one is there during that time. The current building does not work for senior citizen population. The bathrooms are outside, the clubhouse is upstairs, it's not big enough. But we started the conversation with, can we add on to the space? We brought Ken into the conversation, our building inspector, who said for a number of reasons, fire load, all kinds of different construction costs and concerns, we'd be better off with a standalone building. So this conversation has happened in the last week, plus a couple days maybe.
Yeah, beginning of last week. Yeah.
Yes, so it's developed that quickly too, because the grant window is very narrow at this point, because I was looking at this grant from a rental perspective a month and a half ago. And I'm fortunate to have Mike, our county legislator here, who was one of the people who helped put this grant program together for Dutchess County. So he can help answer if there's any questions. I'm just going on the bus right now. But he can help answer any of those grant questions. I specifically requested him to be here, and I appreciate that. If there are any questions about the grant. But what we're looking at right now is the construction of a new building, a senior citizen center. We stand in very good favor. I've had conversations with the county executive and the head of Dutchess County senior operations, Todd St. Creedy. We stand in good favor to be a new Friendship Center location operated by Dutchess County. If we are to make this happen, which would be an incredible opportunity to be a shared services facility. Obviously that's not inked, it's not done, but the conversation is very favorable, and that would be a wonderful win-win opportunity for the town of Lagrange. So what I began asking for is funding for design services. And we've kind of morphed this conversation now, and I don't know, Alan, if you want to step in.
Yeah, we were talking about, because the grant, the application for the grant is very, very tight, we were saying, okay, how do we get some sort of information that would allow us to say how much we're applying for and so forth. And it would need a design for the building and an estimate and that kind of thing. So we started with a conversation talking about that. Somewhere in that cycle, Richie and I were talking, and Richie asked, what about some kind of a modular or prefab building instead, which might end up costing a lot less than a stick build. And so we've reached out to a company which has offered, if we just send them kind of a drawn sketch of what kind of a building we have in mind, they'll design the building and give us a quote for free.
They will, but it won't have, I don't know if it's gonna have architectural detail that we want, plus, I'm not sure that it's still not prevailing wage, even in the factory. I mean, it's a good way to start to get the grant.
I don't think it is, right?
It is, it's on site.
I don't think it is, and I'll tell you why. We're not paying for labor. We're paying for a thing.
I don't care how we.
And I'll give you an example. Last year, we bought a building and we put it in Freedom Park. We paid for the building. We didn't pay prevailing wage or anything along those lines because we're buying something. That's like saying I can't buy a truck because GM doesn't pay prevailing wage. That's not how the law works at all. So we anticipate that this will probably be less expensive, and they're gonna offer a design and a quote, and they're not gonna charge us anything.
I guess like to get the
So we
grant.
decided to get the price for free, and then we can look at it, it makes sense to us.
I've talked to the county, I have to have a certain amount of information to submit at the grant, within the grant timeline. And they're willing to discuss and work with us. They know where we are and they know the time crunch that we're under. I've done all the research as far as, I've talked to the county, as far as what size, would be a reasonable size, how many people we think we would want to assemble, if we were the largest and we opened it up to a large gathering with 2 other towns, so on and so forth. I've done the research, how many people would sit at a table, how many tables we think we would want there. We want a commercial kitchen, we want a restroom a certain size, I want a coat room, I want a utility room, I want a storage for
Right, I know what they do.
all of that.
And what about the foundation? What about the site work? What about the well? What about
They'll
the?
give us a price on pool.
Right.
I think the price is for all of it.
It's 100%.
And there's no well involved because there's
well,
sewer,
no
there's
septic.
sewer, there's sewer and water right there because
Hook up.
the existing building already has sewer and water. You're talking about just hooking into a pipe and something.
So I've never seen, so you tell me they'll do the foundation too?
They're gonna give us a
If that's
price for
enough
all
to
of
give
it.
you the grant, we can always dress up the front with our engineers later.
And here's the thing, we're getting an estimate to go in for the grant. And we're making sure that these people understand that at some point, we're gonna have to go out for bid.
Yes.
Right?
So they do know that.
So because we can't just say, how much are you gonna charge us for this, and I'm gonna make up a million, it's $100,000. We can't just say that sounds good, we have to put it out for bid. So they understand that what they're giving us is an estimate, and then we have to go through a bid process that said, we want a building that's this big and this kind of thing.
See what they're giving us.
And other people can also give us a design and a price as well.
I wanna share with you, because I've done the sketch and, the building, and I don't think you care so much about that. But in looking at just a design concept for the building, because I went that far to look at something and compare it to the structure that's already in that park. You can't go like totally modern, right, with a building that's already there. It has to look like it belongs next to what is next to it, the roof line and everything else. So I found something that I really liked, which I feel like you need to still give something
Correct.
kind of roof line, windows, entry, whatever.
Let me ask you, did you get this? Like, that was one of the things we were negotiating with town center, as far as senior center. If you get the grant, and we make a deal with town center, can that grant money still be, can we put it where we want it?
No.
No.
No, if
So
you
we
get a
get that-
grant, you gotta use the money for what you you've got the grant for it, you can't.
No, I didn't say that, but does it have to go at Stringham Park? Could it go in Town Center?
The senior center?
Yes. Weren't we talking to the developer about a senior center?
I don't know.
You know what I'm trying to say? Can we use
I understand what you're asking.
We already have the
Understand
property
answer.
though, it's underutilized over there.
I mean, I'm fine with it, but
We
Even
have.
now,
That's
Town
what
Center
it is.
isn't gonna happen for
Why would
like,
you take something?
it has to be done within 2 years, correct, Mike?
2 years, and to
2
answer your
years.
question directly, it has to be used in that location for 5 years.
Yes.
So I guess we gotta ask you
Yeah.
something. Okay, I mean, that's fine, it doesn't matter, if that's a good spot, it's a good
Here's,
spot.
here's,
No, we don't have to.
my thought with this is that this beautifully, this design looks beautiful next to what is there, it has the same roof line, it has the same pitch. And it's just something, I looked at so many senior center buildings, and so much of it's like ultra modern, the whole time is glass, it's like really just, I just feel like this is something,
That's easy for a modular company to do.
Yeah,
I feel like
that's-
it's-
yeah.
Right, that's very simple for a modular.
but it has some style to it, has some architectural design to it, I think.
When would you know if you're gonna get the grant or not get the grant?
July.
Okay, so that's perfect, so it's a good time frame.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so I think we need a motion to.
But I just want everyone to understand, the grant, the maximum, the grant amount is $500,000 in total. It's not like we're gonna get that whole amount of money. So we would have some decisions to make, if this comes back, a certain amount of money, say you got $300,000.
Right, we have some decisions.
We might have some decisions about what to do with the rest.
Correct.
Understood.
Because
But I
you
think
have to
tonight.
Now, you could use LPI funds for that.
Yes.
You
You
could, but I'm
You
telling
could.
you right now, and we'll talk about that in the next agenda item, that you would blow the entire rest of the LPI budget and you wouldn't have anything left. There's only another
So we have other avenues. Okay.
We have other
We got other
items.
avenues.
But tonight, I believe we need a motion to authorize her to get the design and estimate and submit it to the grant.
Motion.
Hold on. Sandy, where is this? When you come down the hill, the fields are on your right, where is this building proposed here?
Oh, good question. Kelly has a
We
question.
need to get a
Location where the
design
building
and
is going to be
estimate
parked.
and to submit it and to submit to the county for the grant application is what we're voting on. We have a motion by Mr. Rubasca. Do we have
We
a
have
second?
Kelly.
And Kelly seconded. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Sure.
Kelly, do you have a question about where this building would be in the park? And I've already talked to the president of the football club, because I didn't want him to be blindsided and be like, what are you talking about? How's this gonna impact our operations? So when you go down the hill, it would be adjacent to the building that's there and to the left. So in front of that practice field, we've already paced it off and walked it, so, you know, to the right of the building, obviously, is football fields, and there's a lot of space to the left for a long building like this, and in front, so, and the parking lot is, you know, it's right there. It's all pretty northwest, so.
Did you increase it to 3,000 square feet?
2,500 to 3,000 square feet,
Go to
probably.
3,000.
Yeah,
Okay.
probably.
Right.
Once you have those closets in the kitchen and stuff. you start
Right, you're gonna need it, you wanna have that
parking
big space.
And even if you made the dormers up here bigger, you could.
Well, I'm not making any.
I know, but, yeah, okay.
Right.
This is start.
Next up is, speaking of LPI
Yes.
funds.
Speaking of LPI, and this is the last thing I asked for this month. So, there's just some handouts. I'll get one copy down. Tonight I'm asking for some LPI money, to the tune of $24,064.37. As you know, we have the Nature Play Trail at Freedom Park, Little Woods. It starts by the playground, lines up through the woods, and comes out by the day camp building that has a number of little play stations on it. When we developed it at the beginning, we have one of the spots is a music station. The scouts made some of the things there out of wood, and over time those things rotted and just didn't last. So the first thing, one of the things I'm asking for is musical instruments for the Nature Play Trail, and that's where you'll see those the mushrooms and the tree on page 2. Those would go in the music station. as it's important to me when we put something in that we keep it vital and we keep it looking good, and it's time to add some professional pieces. And those are really beautiful. This company makes the flower chimes that we have in that playground that are right next to the playhouses, and they're just, it's great equipment. So special outdoor musical instruments design, commercial equipment for parks. The other thing, which is on the top page of your handout, is made by Miracle Recreation, and that is a really big climbing turtle. When we have just finished the work outside of the new nature building, up at the top there, we cleared an extra area for a little nature play area up there for the kids. And the guys just finished putting down, we got a load of the playground safety fiber, the wood chips that are on the playground. That is all done and landscaped up there, and I want to add the turtle to that. The guys are gonna build us some things over the winter that they can do in the shop, but this just makes a really wonderful themed addition to that area, which feels really nice with the nature building and with the park. So those two items and the installation of that turtle, which requires sonotubes and concrete footings and everything underneath it, come to the total of $24,000. So currently, in the LPI, we're right around $105,000 after we reconcile the last few bills that are coming in from the concrete slab in the nature building. So I got the printout today from Saran, and there's still a few things to reconcile. So, no, Rich, you cannot have all of that money for a senior center in Middlesbrough, because there's little things like the trail signs and different things that will come up along the way. So it would never be good to.
Right, probably wouldn't be good to deplete at this point. Now.
We have other projects that come in, it'll.
Right, we will be getting more, but
Right.
not, the next 6 months.
Right.
Right, we will be getting more from some of the projects as they move forward. I'll say if, because many of them have been in some last stages of approval for a lot of years, so. No.
The turtle is actually on state contract, that's a state contract price. And the musical instruments, those are considered sole source because there's no one else who makes that actual product.
And it wouldn't be anywhere near the requirement to go out to bid or a procurement process. We might need to have more than one bid.
Right.
I mean, one quote, I should say.
But you're saying it's specialized.
But the thing is, if it's a single quote and that's what you're buying, there is nobody else to bid. So there are exceptions, and this is one of them.
Yeah.
So
Right,
I think we're all good on that.
Okay.
So do I have a motion?
Okay. Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Carried. And are you Donovan?
Listen, this is all good stuff, and it's not.
Is there anything else we can do?
No, last thing I want to say is just that the nature building is completely finished, and I've been talking about this for a long time, and I just want to thank the board for the support, because it has been a long